What's going on, team? Welcome to another episode of the Master Your Craft Study. Real quick, I want to share with you, I had a great opportunity to go speak at a coach's clinic yesterday at Mercer University. It's my alma mater. I wasn't one of the keynote speakers, but between our head coach and the keynote they did have, Coach Driscoll from the University of North Florida, I got a chance to step in and say a few words to the 90 or 100 or so people that were there. And the message that I shared with them was about impact. And I want to talk to you guys just briefly about that. I think that having an impact, and I use the metaphor of a rock in a pond, and the ripples that you send when you spread a good message, the things that you think about, the factors and how far your ripples will reach are how far you throw your rock, right? Because the further that you're throwing these rocks, the more spread out that those ripples will go. And two, how large the rock is, because the larger the rock you throw, the more powerful your message, the more powerful your presence, the more ripples there will be, maybe even waves. And then number three, you really only notice ripples when there's a still pond. And a still pond is just representative of the environment that we're in. And I think right now, when it comes to things like athletic excellence and stories of grit and stories of persistence and those qualitative stories worth sharing, it is a still pond. Most of what we're seeing and hearing on social media and the internet is nonsense. A lot of it's Hollywood, and people are worried about stats and showboating, and some of that stuff is fun, right? I'm not going to just deny all of that. That's kind of what makes the game exciting in the first place. But at the same time, when you've got different outlets, and I don't just mean the Master Your Craft Study, but anyone who's putting out great information that has to do with excellence and the pursuit thereof, we've got to do a good job of spreading that message throughout. What kind of impact are we having on not only our players, but on every person that we come in contact with? So that's what I got a chance to talk to them about. And I'll leave that little segment with a quote that I talked to them about. It says, "The life I touch for good or ill will touch another life, and that in turn another, until who knows where the trembling stops or in what far place my touch will be felt." It's from Frederick Buckner. I believe it's Buckner. I don't want to butcher his last name, but he was a novelist, poet, and theologian here in America. And I really love that quote. All about impact. All about spreading a positive message. All right, on to our fan shout out. This week it's Andrew Ruzek. I can't read you the whole message that Andrew said. It was very positive, and it almost had me in tears. This one really hit close to home. Let me see if I can find an excerpt here for you. He said, "Jake, just wanted to say I'm really enjoying listening to the podcast. I've only listened to a few so far, but I listened to one with Alan Stein, and I thought it was awesome." Then he goes into a few things about Alan's podcast. Then he says, "I love the grit question, and I think you're right. It does have a lot of meanings, and it's hard to have a single definition for it. It's fun to hear the different responses. Anyways, I appreciate all the stuff you post. It's insightful and motivates me on a daily basis. I'm looking forward to listening to the other podcasts and watching the show grow. Keep up the awesome work. I appreciate it." Andrew, I appreciate you, man. The message you sent, I only was able to touch on a little bit of it here on the show, but unbelievably meaningful to me. And for everyone listening, it's messages like those that really juice me up, get me going, because this is a labor of love for myself and for the other people that help on this Master Your Craft team that I've been trying to put together. And for us, seeing that we're having some sort of an impact is really what gets us going. That's the whole purpose. We want to have an impact on people's lives in a positive way. And so reading that message from Andrew just continues to remind me that even if it's only one person, it could be 5,000, but even if it's only one or two or three or seven, having an impact on people in our community is something that's always worthwhile. So you got me juiced up, Andrew, and I'm going to continue to bring it. I'm going to continue to do a good job with this show and to try to bring positive messages to all the people that are listening. This episode is brought to you by Barukas.com, Barukas.com. I've been waiting for a while to sponsor the show with any sort of brand or product because I wanted to make sure it was something that was both relevant and then also something that I personally could get behind. I didn't want to be promoting something that I wasn't a fan of myself. But these are possibly the healthiest snack on the planet. And for those of you that know me personally, know how important health is to me. I believe that you can't be at your best or you can't truly be chasing excellence if you're not taking care of your body first. Your mind will follow. And so if you're not taking care of your body, you'll suffer mentally as well. And one of the biggest proponents of a healthy lifestyle is making sure that you have healthy snacks on deck. And these can be that for you. Baru nuts, as you can call them for short, are loaded with antioxidants, micronutrients, fiber, and proteins. A really great amino acid profile for you health junkies out there. But anyways, when I had a chance to partner with them, I jumped on it. And so they're going to be the first sponsor of the show, and they're offering 10% off for anyone's first order if you type in code Jacob in the cart, Jakob. Go to their website, check them out. They have a ton of cool information on there. In fact, they're actually great for the environment as well, and they're helping with some deforestation issues down in South America. So good for you and good for the planet. Barukas.com, Barukas. Go check them out. And if you do, take some pictures and tag me on social media accounts. This is something I want to help spread the word for. This is a relatively new product here, and I think they're doing a great thing. All right, on to the guest. This week's guest played basketball at Indiana University. He was a teammate of Victor Oladipo, and he got a chance to witness some tremendous talent and got a chance to play for some tremendous coaches along the way. When he got done with his career, he entered a coaching career for a couple years before founding Competitive Greatness Training, which is his own company. And if you know anything about basketball, or if you're a basketball junkie to any degree, you probably know where the term competitive greatness comes from. And I'm not going to spoil that. It's one of the first questions that I asked Tayler in the show. But it's really cool. He's a basketball junkie. He's committed. He's a hardworking guy. He's determined. His work ethic is off the charts. He's got some awesome training programs and works with tremendous players as well. And most importantly, he's effective. I think that his approach and his philosophy to the game is one that you actually see results from. So without further delay, please enjoy my conversation with Tayler Ware. Tayler, welcome to the Master Your Craft Study. How's it going, man?
Good, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. For those of you listening, Competitive Greatness is the name of Tayler's training company. And I want to start right there, Tayler. I heard you in a video talk about where you got the name of Competitive Greatness from. I'd like to go into a little bit detail about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I started doing some of this stuff, I kind of put more time and effort into the name than people would even realize, probably more time than I should have. But, John Wooden's got that pyramid of success, and I've always had coaches over the years that have posted that different spots. As a kid, you just see it up on the wall. You don't necessarily think about it. There's a couple points that coaches make, but I remember circling back to it, trying to figure out kind of what I wanted to be about, what I wanted the training to be about. And so as soon as I saw competitive greatness, in his mind, that was being at your best when your best is needed, and like real love for a competitive environment and those sorts of things. And so, that was kind of the goal with what we did when we started was, we want to prepare these athletes to be at their best when their best is needed of them, when their best is called of them. And what I talk all the time about, it's tattooed on my chest, is you really got to always be at your best. So the better that you get, the more you understand that, the more you realize it's not just being at your best when, a big opportunity presents itself or when something comes your way. It's learning how to be at your absolute best or close to that as much as you can all the time, because you really don't know when those opportunities are going to present themselves. So that was kind of the main thing. And it's been something that I've really enjoyed as being part of our, philosophy, and something that we continue to kind of drive home for all those athletes that we work with.
Absolutely. And so that, obviously you alluded to it with it being something that was present for you. You were fortunate enough to be around programs or coaches that talked about someone as great of an influence as John Wooden. Talk about your experience as a basketball player, or the coaches you've been around and players you've been around, and how you kind of got that attitude or that the need or the representation of the spirit of excellence in everything that you do. Like, talk about where you've developed that philosophy.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I was very lucky. It started at an early age. I've got, a great family. I had a very blessed upbringing. My dad used to take me out in the driveway all the time, and we would work on, stuff real late, probably annoying the living daylights out of neighbors as we're dribbling the ball late at night. But, it kind of started there. I had some good coaches, obviously, and mentors when I was younger. And then really, Brian Shaughnessy, who I've actually had the privilege of coaching with, he was the junior varsity coach at the high school that I went to, and, very similar age to me and some of these high school athletes that we work with. When you're close in age, you kind of have a little bit of a different connection. And so he was the guy that would, open the gym doors really early in the morning for me if I wanted to go shoot. We would kind of stay after and rebound, all those sorts of things. And then my senior year, Travis Doherty, who actually just kind of retired as a high school coach, he came into my life and came into our program and actually was the one who got my foot in the door for everything that happened at IU. And again, ironically, both those coaches, I actually got to coach underneath him my first year coaching high school. So it was awesome to see, that relationship develop as a player coach, and then also, from coach to coach. It's different on both ends, but it was cool to see that. And those two have really had, a profound effect on where I'm at. And then obviously, being at IU and now traveling around to different places, there's different coaches, there's different trainers that I've come into contact with that have had little, pieces that have rubbed off on me in one way or another. Tim Buckley was our associate head coach at IU, kind of the coach that I had probably the strongest bond relationship with. He's actually now a scout for the Minnesota Timberwolves. So he's kind of around doing some different things, but he's a guy that, in, again, multiple regards. I remember one of the first things he told me, being at a place like Indiana, those coaches at that level are just crazy intense. People don't really get it unless you've been in it before. You can say it till you're blue in the face, but you just don't know. And so, being a walk-on, being behind the 8 ball from an athleticism standpoint, from a height standpoint, from multiple different standpoints. I remember sitting in Coach Buckley's office saying, hey, I feel like I can't do anything right. I feel like he's always on my rear end. Am I really doing this much wrong? What's your best advice for me? And this was incredible advice. I've used it a million different times with our athletes too. And he said, the day that he stops harping on you and trying to coach you is the day that you're in trouble. It means he doesn't care anymore. But as he continues to try to coach you and get in your rear end, you know that you're actually probably in a good spot. And so, again, that was pretty profound for me, and something that, again, I tell our athletes, because I'm an intense guy too. It's like I'm only being intense because I want what's best for you and I want you to improve. And the day that I stop coaching you is the day that, again, I really don't care about you anymore. So, like I said, there's been a ton of different people. I wish I could name all of them, but those are kind of the main ones, at least for me, up until this point in my career, that have had a really profound effect on what I've done.
That's awesome. Sounds like you've had some excellent mentorship. Talk a little bit about some of the players that you're working with. You don't have to use their names specifically, but in your work with some players, what do you see that players get wrong right now? Where do players in training struggle the most? And what do you think in general that basketball or any sport athletes could be working on and to improve, especially at the, say, high school level right now?
Right. It's a great question. And again, there's a lot of different ways you can go. You can get really technical with the basketball part. I'm, as you can probably already tell, very, very much kind of going above and beyond that, because I think the other stuff's way more important. So I'll get technical very briefly, and then I'll get back to kind of the stuff I was talking about. Footwork is huge. Mm-hmm. So from a technical standpoint, I see so many different flaws in footwork. And again, a lot of people, even like from a jump shot standpoint, it's an easy example to use. A lot of people want to fix what's going on, the waist up, maybe your elbow's out too far. Obviously your follow through and all that stuff's important. Don't get me wrong, but usually the bottom half is causing a lot of the issues. And so the footwork's a big part of it. Balance, exactly. So, we work on a ton of different things off the dribble, off the catch. I actually try to push them both from a fatigue standpoint and from a concept standpoint to the point where they are struggling with that balance. So I can say, okay, here's exactly the situation you're going to be presented with. Here's how we've got to get better. You don't need to slow down to get your balance, because that's a false sense of improvement. You're not going to slow down in a game. We've got to get you to better understand how to do it at the speed that we're doing it at. So I would say footwork very generally, whether in the post, off the catch, off the dribble, that's the technical part I think that most athletes struggle with more than anything else. On the broader scale, I think the challenge with most athletes is that they don't understand the work level it's going to take. So, there's that quote that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. I see it in everybody's social media profile. Most of the kids that posted in their social media profile have no interest in even backing that up. But what I say with that quote, and I've said it for years, is I love it. I think it's a great quote. I think the concept and the thought behind it is great. But you got to take the whole second half off of that. So it should just be hard work beats talent, period. So, use LeBron James as an example. LeBron James is 1,000 times more gifted than a guy like me. I can bridge that gap even though he is more talented. So the statement, the way it's written, almost seems like, well, if that kid's talented or that guy's talented, I'm never going to be able to catch him even if I do work hard. To me, it's all relevant, right? So they can be talented. They can even work pretty hard, but I'm just going to have to work that much harder. To make up and bridge that gap, I have to understand maybe the difference in my God-gifted ability and be able to bridge that gap. And if they're working, at a level twice as hard as everybody else, I might have to work 4 times as hard as everybody else to catch that person. And so I think the struggle that athletes have right now is, they walk into a gym and I think automatically they just think, well, I'm better than that athlete or I'm better than this athlete. And they don't realize that it actually takes the work on top of it, not just you showing up at the gym and being better. And so it's something we, again, talk about all the time. I try to, bring kind of the group in before and after a workout just to talk about what we're going to do, what we're going to be working on, and then afterwards maybe some things that I saw. But again, we almost never get technical in those little powwows, if you want to call it that. It's always talking about the point that I made yesterday, and this is probably a good way to look at it because it goes back to the footwork piece. I've been working with some guys who have some serious NBA potential, and if they do things the right way this year, are going to have a really good chance to put themselves in a good spot to be in that conversation. And so even for them, I'll show them some stuff that they may have seen before and haven't worked on in a while, or maybe haven't seen at all, just based on me, watching film and learning every day myself. When they struggle with the footwork, they don't slow things down to try to get it, perfect the first time. They'll try to go maybe at 75% instead of 50%. They'll get it, and then they're right into that 100%. They'll mess up the 100% 2 or 3 times, but they'll keep coming back and doing it again. And the fun part for me, or the funny part to see a lot of times, is when I describe it to an athlete like that, they'll kind of be like in the back of the line, or like, before the drill starts, kind of thinking through what it is. Maybe it's a combo move. They're doing that combo move, like trying to process in their mind what it's going to look like. And then they just go, as opposed to, younger athletes, I think, kind of hear it or sometimes don't even, quite frankly, listen to what you're saying. And they just go through the drill just to get through the drill. They don't think about how that's going to translate. So that's the thing. I think it's twofold. It's one, understanding that you might be working hard, but you can definitely work harder. We talk about, improving by 1% every day. You don't have to work twice as hard tomorrow as you did today, but try to work 1% harder than you did the day before every day. And that's going to build up over time. So it starts with that. It starts with understanding you may be working hard, but you can work harder, and you've got to bridge that gap, because it all becomes relevant at some point with people who might be more talented than you. The second piece is just sheerly the focus on the details of things and how those details are going to be effective in an actual game setting, as opposed to just going through a drill where there's a bunch of cones set up just to get through the drill. So those are probably the 2 main things to me that I see that athletes are struggling with across the board.
Gotcha. What sort of things do you get juiced about? Like when you have a workout and some of your guys just have a tremendous day, what sort of things can they do or have they done that really gets you excited for them in those workouts?
I'll use one example because I love the kid. I've worked with him for a few months. And, everybody always talks about like, oh man, this kid got, these offers after working with you, or this kid got this opportunity after working with you. It has nothing to do with that. It's always the kid making a transition in his mind and him buying into the work or her buying into the work. And again, doing it on their own, because I only get so much access to them, especially at the high school level. And so, yeah, correct. So we had a kid who probably started working with us hot and heavy, like right before the AAU season started. Some things fell into place for him. He grew a lot late, shot up from 6 foot to like he's 6'7", 6'8" now. So again, that was part of the process too. Like I had nothing to do with that.
Why didn't that happen to you?
If I did, I would be 6'8" too. So, my point would be is, he started to really buy into the process. He started to get better at the skills we were working on. He started to work harder, and that was starting to get exciting for me. But I'm telling you, when he turned the corner, and I've told him this multiple times, and it's been awesome to watch him continue to do some of this, is that, he started to work with our college guys. Our college guys who've been with me for a long time understand the importance of that communication like I was talking about. They know if a guy's struggling in a drill, misses a couple shots, obviously I can help them with that. I can say something to them, but it's almost better coming from player to player in most cases. So they've started to understand, even within workouts, you don't have to be silent. You don't have to be quiet. You can help other guys along, and that's going to help you in the process build your leadership and build your communication. So, this kid started picking up some significant Division I offers and a bunch of Division II offers. And as that's all happening, it was no secret that like in these workouts, he would shift from the college guys where maybe he was the younger one, quiet, trying to figure everything out, to he's in workouts with high school kids and some of our better middle schoolers. And now he's the one that's communicating to them. So, that to me is I'm over in the corner kind of like, doing my thing, bringing the energy, talking to everybody in the group. And I look across and I see him coaching these kids up. That's the type of stuff that gets me juiced. It's cool to go up and see a guy, windmill dunk. It's cool to see the improvement. And don't get me wrong, I get juiced up about that too. But little things like that, and it's not a little thing, it's a huge thing to me. But, something like that really amps me up, and like not only in that workout, for the entire rest of the day and the rest of the week will get me kind of re-energized to say like, here's a kid who's gotten to the point where you're trying to get to, and here's the things that he's worked on the court. But I'm telling you, on top of that, here's exactly what he's figured out and what he's learned. And so that's the type of stuff that gets me amped up, just because, again, going back to the inspiration piece, is like that to me is a solid sign that he's not only buying into it when he's there, he's buying into it when he's on his own. And, college coaches look for that stuff. College coaches they're not stupid. They're going to do their homework, and they're going to do all the things they need to do to not only know that you're a good basketball player, but you're going to be, a good student athlete. You're going to be a good leader. You're going to be effective around the group that they've got. So that's the stuff really that gets me inspired and gets me, ready to rock and roll throughout the day, is stuff like that.
It's exciting to see a transfer. It's exciting to see. I remember in some of the years that I was coaching, we would have our college guys would work our youth camps in the summertime, and a lot of the youth camp instruction was parallel, or obviously to a lesser degree, but was parallel with what we would teach the guys, and some similar drills and philosophies. And you could always tell who the guys were that were committed to development, because as they would be in charge of teaching the youth group during those summer camps, the guys that paid attention all throughout the year, that were committed to development in our own practices, were the ones that were best able to educate the youth on those same topics. Yeah. And you could see the change. And it showed. It was very obvious, because those are the same players the following year that came back much better, rather than the guys that came back after a summer without development and didn't have a growth mindset, and now they've kind of just leveled off.
Well, I think a good point to make too, not to cut you off, is that they're, in order to be able to tell other people and lead other people effectively and coach them up as a player, you've got to hold up your end of the bargain first. So again, the example I always use for athletes is like, if you don't block out every time, you going to your buddy on that team and getting in his room to block out is going to be counterproductive, because he's going to go right back at you and say, well, you just missed a block out on the last possession, so why are you getting on me? If you commit to doing it every time, and if you're the one that's, if not the hardest worker, one of the hardest workers on that team, now you can say anything to anybody. So, that's kind of the spot that I was lucky to be in. Even my senior year at IU was, I wasn't playing, so I didn't get minutes on the floor, but I busted my rear end in practice. And the guys knew, like, when we were at practice, I was one of the guys who worked just as hard, if not harder. I just was vertically challenged and athletically challenged, comparatively speaking. So that gave me the ability to, especially like these freshmen who needed some guidance, be able to sit them down and say, like, hey, here's what you got to do in order to take the next step. Like, here's the stuff you've got to learn. I know I'm not playing, but I've lived it. I've seen it. I've seen the guys like Victor Oladipo who have gotten to that like next level just sheerly from that effort. So that's a huge point to make, I think, with that too, is not just deciding one day, hey, I'm gonna start talking and leading and coaching my other teammates up or younger athletes. It starts with you buying into working as hard as you possibly can and doing all the things that you're going to try to help them with, so that when they come watch you do what you do, or they try to come back at you with some of that, that you're doing everything you can to hold up your end of the bargain.
Absolutely. I teach a leadership class at the local university here, and we were just talking about different leadership qualities to be effective. And two of them that are kind of ringing true in this conversation are, obviously there's a ton of value in being the technical expert, right? If you're the guy that studies up on the game and the skills and, knows the offense and defense like the back of his hand, that's one way, because no one can question you then on your knowledge of the game. But then on the flip side, your charisma and your energy and your approach every single day, if that's not consistent, it's hard for you to hold others to a standard. So being in charge of holding people to a standard also kind of helps you stay accountable as well. Well, I know we've got a couple more questions here, Tayler. Let's shift a little bit. I want to stay talking about some of the training and you working with players, or even players that you've played with or that you've seen along the way. What about off the court? You're an intense guy. You believe in the competitive nature during practice. When you leave the court, the game doesn't necessarily stop. I think mentally it probably should from time to time, but there are things like diet and sleep and things like that that are important. What sort of advice do you give to guys as far as how they handle themselves outside of training and outside of the game?
Yeah. It kind of goes back to, again, bridging that gap from a talent standpoint. So that's why it's so important to understand maybe where you're at and have, that self-awareness to maybe say, okay, from a strictly talent gifted perspective, I'm not quite as good as that guy, or I'm not quite as good as the level that I'm trying to get to. So, you can have that bag of Doritos, you can eat that bag of cookies, you can go have, that sundae from wherever you're at, but that's going to put you a little bit of a step back from the other guys. Like, again, I'll use Victor Oladipo as the example because he's probably the best player that I've ever played with. Obviously, NBA All-Star, he's very committed to that stuff. And I think he was very self-aware early on, and that's how he was able to get to that point. But like me versus Vic can probably have a few cookies here and there and still is going to wipe the floor with me if we play one-on-one. It's going to take me committing to that nutrition for a long period of time in order to really bridge that gap. And so, I always tell athletes, it's not like you've got to be perfect. It's not like you've got to do everything to a T, but the more things that you can line up, the more you can get adequate sleep, the more you can have the right nutrition plan, the more you can be in the weight room doing the right type of stuff, the more you can be in the gym. All of that stuff's going to add up. And then, on top of that, you look at like the academic piece of it. There's so many different ways and so many different levels now of college basketball that, academics become a huge piece of. So like even at the NAIA level, there's some different rules where you can get some money here and there with the academics, and now you become more marketable at that level simply because the coaches and the programs don't have to use quite as much athletic money to get you to come there. And so, like I said, it's a more matter of like the trade-off of how good do you really want to be? Do you want to be a guy who has a great varsity high school basketball career? There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. There's a ton of great players who've done that, and that's been the end of their basketball career. Do you want to be a guy that goes and plays at Indiana or North Carolina or Duke? You better start buying into that nutrition and all that stuff pretty early, because that is the cream of the crop. You've got hundreds of thousands of athletes that want to go to those places every year. Mm-hmm. And then again, same thing with the NBA. Those are the guys that I'm talking to now. Is like, one of the guys, I was messing with him on a recent trip. He's a guy that's probably just outside the second round as far as NBA draft projections go. And, we go to like a little local burger joint, and we order food. And, I'm the coach sitting there with like a chicken sandwich, and my diet could be a lot better. But, I've got a chicken sandwich, and I look across, and he's got this big old burger, the chili cheese fries. And I joked, and I was like, I know that ain't on the nutrition plan. And he kind of laughed. And, this is a kid that's like super chiseled up, obviously is doing the work that he needs to. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. You can splurge, you can kind of enjoy yourself on those sorts of things, but it's all relevant. You've got to understand where you're at and where you need to get to and how much you're going to have to buy into those things.
Yeah, it means different things to different people, bigger jumps. Some people need to take advantage of that in other areas. Well, Taylor, this has been a tremendous interview. We're going to rapid fire these last few questions. So just give me brief answers, first thought that comes to your mind, and then we'll wrap up. So the first one, list a few books that you have on the top of your head that you think would be good for players, coaches, and trainers to listen to.
Toughness by Bilas, 10X by Grant Cardone. I'm going to leave it at those two. Those are two good ones.
Sweet. Can't wait to check those out. I haven't read either of them. Favorite professional player?
Professional what player?
Professional player. Any sport.
Oh, professional player. I'm biased, but Victor Oladipo.
Favorite professional coach?
Brad Stevens.
Who do you follow on social media that you think other people should follow?
Jordan Lawley, J-Law B-Ball.
Awesome. And then last one, and this is a question that everyone on the show has to answer. You provide the waking thought to people all around the world. When their alarm clock goes off in the morning, beep, 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 Taylor Ware gets to send a 10-second message to them and be the first voice they hear in the morning. What do you tell them?
Be better today than you were yesterday.
Love that. Absolutely love that. Taylor, this has been a tremendous episode. I think that there is so much that people can learn from your perspective right now. We could have gone on for hours about this. I love your perspective and your philosophy on the game. Where can people find more of you? What are your socials? What are your websites? Where can they follow you and your work?
We're all over the place on social media. Competitive greatness is kind of where we're taking, most of our efforts towards. So the social media tagline is @CGreatnessTrain, so the letter C and then Greatness Train, all one word. www.competitive-greatness.com is our website. We're putting more time and effort into our YouTube channel. You can search Competitive Greatness, but we've got a ton of vlog type of episodes, full workout videos. So anybody that's either trying to get into the space, is curious about the space, wants to see some of the high level guys that we're working with, you can find all that stuff there. And we're going to have some pretty good content here from the past 3 to 4 weeks of working with these guys and traveling around the country. That'll be kind of cool to watch. So that's where I would kind of sit. Instagram's a big one for us. So those are the spots you can find us.
Awesome. Tayler, well, thank you so much.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
All right, team. We'll see you guys soon. Team, don't go anywhere just yet. Give me 1 second.